recording it and publicizing it.
Okay, yeah, I think we are live on YouTube as well. So good evening all who are in India. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are throughout the world. Welcome to the UDCT Alumni Association's Professor K. Venkatraman Memorial Oration. I am Nilesh Lele, current Secretary of UDCT Alumni Association and your host for today's event. First and foremost, we would like to welcome our today's guest speaker, Lieutenant General Dr. Madhuri Kanitkar, Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, Nashik. A warm welcome to our own Vice Chancellor of ICT, Professor Aniruddha Pandit. I would also like to welcome our former UDCT directors, Padma Vibhushan Professor M.M. Sharma and Padma Bhushan Professor J.B. Joshi, and former Vice Chancellor Padma Shri Professor G.D. Yadav, and all the other current and past ICT faculty members. I would also like to welcome Shri Kishore Mariwala, Mrs. Sandra Shroff, UDCT Alumni Association Advisory Board members, UDCT Alumni Association BOG members, students, and everybody else who's attending today's lecture. Also a warm welcome to Mr. Dilip Udas and members of Professor K. Venkatraman family. This lecture series is a brainchild of Mr. Kishore Mariwala, and the lectures are named after 5 luminaries of UDCT, now called ICT. The earlier lectures were Professor K. Venkatraman Memorial Oration delivered by Padma Vibhushan Professor M.M. Sharma in April 2018. Professor G.M. Nabar Memorial Oration delivered by Shri R. Gopal Krishnan of Tata Sons in April 2019.
Prof.
Professor G.P. Kane Memorial Oration delivered by Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO of Niti Aayog in May 2019. Professor J.G. Kane Memorial Oration delivered by Shri Harsh Mariwala of Marico Limited in October 2020. Professor B.D. Tirak Memorial Oration delivered by Dr. Ajit Ranade, Group Executive President and Chief Economist, Aditya Birla Group in April 2021. This is the 6th in the series, and hence it's called again Professor K. Venkatraman Memorial Oration. With this brief background, I would now like to welcome Dr. Sanjay Mehendale, President of UDCT Alumni Association, to address the August gathering.
Good evening all. We have honor to have Lieutenant General Kanitkar here, such a decorated officer to give us this particular oration is really honor, and we are all really looking forward to hear from her about her roles, responsibilities in the Indian Armed Forces, as well as what are the opportunities there are for the for the women in Indian Armed Forces. I'll not take much of a time between her lecture and you. Just want to mention about this lecture series, which was started by Mr. Kishore Mariwala. He is a distinguished alumnus of ICT and who initiated this activity through a generous endowment, which takes care of not only the expenses of during this when we are conducting these lectures, but there is some kind of an honorarium for the speaker also. So the idea behind this lecture series was to give exposure to all our students, the faculties, as well as alumni, about the various topics, wide coverage of a range, wide-ranging topics, so that people are not only looking at anything only technical, but have exposure to various other fields, and that's his idea, and that is the with that idea he insisted that we should start this lecture series, and that is how these lectures were started. These named lectures are arranged to the honor to contribute of the stalwarts, which Nilesh Lele has already told you about. They have contributed significantly to the national scene in the areas of chemical sciences, and they were also associated with our alma mater, have made path-breaking contributions to the national chemical industry. So these lectures are honoring each one of these eminent personalities, and that's how this lecture series are going on. So as Nilesh said, this is the 6th lecture in the series, and then again this is the second lecture in the name of Professor Venkatraman. Now, before I end my talk, I will just give a brief history about UAA. Though our alma mater is more than 75 years old, we were a little late in starting the UDCT Alumni Association. It's still called the UDCT Alumni Association because our alma mater initially was called University Department of Chemical Technology, which is the short form for the this UDCT is the short form for that. And again, Mr. Kishore Mariwala was a founder member to start the Alumni Association. So we have been always grateful to Mr. Mariwala that he not only started the Alumni Association, but have been involved in the Alumni Association for the past 30 years now. We started nearly 30 years back the Alumni Association. And Alumni Association does a lot of activities which helps our alma mater. One of the few activities which we carry out are basically giving loans to the needy students. We also do some infrastructural developments like laboratory upgradation. Now we are taking up the classroom upgradation. We also conduct some kind of a course for the undergraduate students, which is very, very popular now. This course is basically bridging the gap between what is taught in the alma mater, which is generally related to academics and research and things like that, but what is also required by the industry. And this particular gap is bridged by this particular course. This course is becoming very popular. This course is a brainchild of our past president, Mr. Dilip Das. And he has designed this course in such a way because he has a lot of experience in the industry as well. And with my various alumni colleagues who are also from the industry, they are conducting this course very well. And it is now the 6 years since we are conducting this course. We are also going to start a similar course for the students who are doing their research, to give them a background about how the research should be conducted and what are the various aspects of the research which they should look into when they are conducting the research. Our Vice Chancellor, Professor Pandit, has given us a go-ahead to have this also kind of a lecture series related for the students, and we will be soon starting this. So these are the various activities which we undertake, and all our alumni normally contribute very well to these various activities. Whenever we ask for any help, people readily come forward and help us out. And I once again thank all the alumni who have really helped us to continue our various programs till date. So with that, I will just say once again, welcome to Lieutenant General Dr. Kanitkar, and we are really honored to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahendra. I would now like to call upon Mr. Dilip Udas, the immediate past president of UDCT Alumni Association, to talk about his reminiscence of Professor K. Venkatraman.
Well, thank you, Nilesh. Good evening, everyone. Our guest for the oration, Lieutenant General Srimati Madhuri Kanitkar. Vice Chancellor Professor Pandit, Sri Kishore Bhai Mariwala, the President of the UAA, Dr. Sanjay Mahendra, the earlier Vice Chancellors, the board, the members of the Board of Governors, UAA, faculty members of ICT, distinguished audience, and dear students. Reminiscences is not really a right word because I never had an occasion to meet Dr. Venkatraman. But it is a privilege and also a pleasure to talk about Dr. K. Venkatraman. The day I stepped into the Digestive Technology Department of the then UDCT, the UDCT Department of Chemical Technology, way back in 1969, I was introduced to him through all our teachers and researchers. KV, as he was referred most of the time, was the most talked about and the epitomized person in the department. Dr. Krishnaswamy Venkatraman, which was his full name, was born on 7th June 1901 in Madras, now Chennai, in a very scholarly family. His father was a civil engineer and a Sanskrit scholar, and his brothers, renowned authors and doctors. His daughter was a recognized historian of economics, and his son-in-law a very senior bureaucrat. In the early career, he studied chemistry in Presidency College, Madras, and secured his MA. Apparently, at that time, the degree given was MA from the University of Madras in 1923. He moved on to the University of Manchester and obtained his MSc Tech and later on PhD and DSc degrees. His guide during the doctorate was Nobel laureate Professor Robert Robinson. After 1928, when he completed his DSc, he spent a few years at Lahore, then a part of undivided India, at Foreman Christian College. Dr. Venkatraman joined the newly formed University Department of Chemical Technology in 1934 as a reader and went on to becoming the head of the department and then the director, the first Indian to be so of UDCT in 1943. In the year 1957, he went on to become director of National Chemical Laboratories, where he continued as a director till 1966. And his association was continued for several years afterwards. KV, as he is affectionately known, is a pioneer of Baker-Venkatraman reaction, where a base catalyzed reaction of 2-acetoxy-acetophenone is rearranged to 2-hydroxy-1,3-diketones. Now it appears a very simple reaction, but to invent this reaction was something. Now this final product, when 1,3-diketone under acidic conditions converts to a flavone and leads to a synthesis of several flavones and chromarones. If you look at it, very few reactions, organic reactions, are named after Indian scientists, KV being one of them. KV got an opportunity to visit Germany at the end of the Second World War. And this I am guessing, probably as a British government scientist or a representative to investigate German companies like IG Farben at the end of the war. Something that led to the Bias and Fiat reports. The German dyestuff industry formed the basis of several other related or allied chemical industries, primarily because of the intermediates involved. KV's passion led to his authoring initial 2 volumes of synthetic dyes chemistry, which are almost like a Bhagavad Gita to a desktop professional. And as I remember my days, there were 6 or 7 copies each of these 2 volumes available, and a long waiting list to get them. The literature and that these books, first 2 books covered, is incredible. Subsequently, he wrote 6 more volumes on the different types of dyes and allied compounds. These books, even now, continue to be of use to all those, not only who practice dyestuff chemistry, but who practice organic chemistry. Later on, during its stint at NCL, it was KV who promoted interaction with industry. And in spite of, being only a chemist, as you would say, believed in a practical and down-to-earth answer to the problems. His students at NCL included Dr. A.V. Ramarao, Dr. B.D. Tilak, and Dr. Nityanand, just to mention a few. During those days, in the 60s and the 70s, a BSc taken dyes at UAA, followed by PhD at NCL, was a chosen path of a number of professionals. Elected member of the Royal Society of Chemistry and several other similar organizations and the Academy of Sciences, KV was awarded Padma Bhushan in the year 1961. Building organizations was his forte, and he was instrumental in attracting a lot of talent and scientists to come to NCL. A person with great wit and sense of humor was another of his qualities. A remarkable contribution was the understanding of lac pigments, and a number of these were shown to contain nitrogen. He was also the first scientist to use X-ray crystallography to establish structures of organic compounds. The analytical tools those days were not as refined as they are today. Even now, after so many years, Dr. Venkatraman passed away in the year 1981. But after so many years, he is fondly remembered as KV. And in the UDCity, UICity or ICT, when the hall, a big hall called Old Auditorium was renovated, it was rightfully decided that this would be called the KV Auditorium. And with the facilities and the scientific seminars and programs that are held in the KV Auditorium, as soon as you enter the KV Auditorium, the first thing you notice is a upright figure of Dr. Venkatraman, and of course, later on all the other directors, which form a part of KV Auditorium. KV, as to all of us, is very dear to the heart and known to almost everyone who thinks about UDCity, UICity or ICT. Today, after so many years, we are still very proud in belonging to an institution which was first headed by KV as the only the first Indian director to do so at UDCity as well as the NCL. And it's his legacy that we expect to carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Udas sir. And I'm sure youngsters like me and people younger than me have learned a lot about the history of past 120 years of Professor KV's life and his legacy. I would now like to welcome Professor Aniruddha Pandit, Vice Chancellor of Institute of Chemical Technology, to speak a few words on this occasion and also introduce today's guest speaker of the Professor K. Venkatraman Memorial Oration. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nilesh. And after listening to a very elaborate introduction about Alumni Association and Professor K. Venkatraman, I don't want to add anything. But the only thing which I want to say here is all of us are extremely proud to to be part of ICT and whatever programs which ICT conducts, and especially in the name of Professor K. Venkatraman, is valued significantly. So I have a pleasant opportunity to introduce today's speaker, who so graciously agreed to give this Professor K. Venkatraman Memorial Lecture. Lieutenant General Dr. Madhuri Kanitkar, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Vishishta Seva Medal, is a retired general officer in Indian Army. She is the third woman in the Indian Armed Forces to be promoted to a 3-star rank after Lieutenant General Purita Arora and Air Marshal Padma Bandyopadhyay. She also served as a Deputy Chief of Integrated Defense Staff, Medical College, under the Chief of Defense Staff. She served as a Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisor Council as well. And we had an opportunity to work together on one of the DBT meetings as well. On 6th of July 2021, she was appointed the Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, Nasik, by Government of Maharashtra, and took over this appointment after her retirement from Army in October 2021. She was born in 1960 in Dharwad. With both her grandparents being doctor, it was but natural for her to choose that path, and she joined Armed Forces Medical College, Pune in 1978. She was placed first in Pune University in all 3 phases of her MBBS. She was awarded the prestigious gold medal, President's Gold Medal for the best outgoing student of the graduate wing in academics and extracurricular activities, apart from Kalinga Trophy for excellence in academics. As far as his military career is concerned, it has been path-breaking and an example for many. She was commissioned in the Army Medical Corps in December 1982 and did her post-graduation in 1990, earning the Doctor of Medicine degree in pediatrics, post that she underwent training in pediatric nephrology at AIIMS, New Delhi. She also completed fellowship at National University Hospital, Singapore, and the Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, and the fellowship of medical education. She has tenanted appointed of associate professor, and head of the Department of Pediatrics at the Armed Forces Medical College, Pune. She has also served as a professor at the Army College of Medical Sciences and the Army Hospital, Research and Referral. Kanitkar was instrumental in setting up the first pediatric nephrology service in Army Medical Corps and has served as a president of the Indian Society of Pediatrics Nephrology. She has served as a Deputy Director, General Armed Forces Medical Services in the office of DGA-FMS in New Delhi. On 28 January 2017, she assumed the office of Dean and Deputy Commandant of her alma mater, that is Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, and served as a Major General Medical at the Northern Command at Udhampur. She was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General on 29 February 2020 on that day. She has received many awards, but as far as military career is concerned, the awards such as Visishta Seva Medal in 2014, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal in 2018, and Param Vishishta Seva Medal in January 2022 are the most recognized ones. To conclude, I would also say that I'm very happy that my own niece served under her command, Dr. Aparna Sail Pandit, when she was working in J&K, and her husband, who is also an orthopedic surgeon for Army. So I've heard many stories from them about you, madam. Madam, I'm extremely grateful for you for accepting our invitation, and the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. While I start sharing my screen, I will, yes. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
If you go to the slideshow, yeah, that's perfect.
I have done that. Thank you so much, Professor Pandit, for the Honorable Vice Chancellor of ICT, for those kind words of introduction. I'm really honored to be delivering this lecture and to have so many luminaries, including Dr. Mehndre, the President, Dr. Nilesh Lele, the Secretary, Kishore Bhai Mariwala, an alumnus, so many illustrious luminaries who've held and decorated luminaries who've held the post of Vice Chancellor, and all the Alumni Association and dear friends. Actually, I was a little surprised when I did get this invite as to what am I going to talk to such highly accomplished chemical in the field of chemical engineering. And I did read a little bit about this. So I thought I should start with salutations to Padma Bhushan Professor K. Venkatraman. And in that, I thought I'll just start the ball rolling by quoting Henry Brooks' Adam that teachers affect eternity. No one can tell where their influence stops. And you must be wondering, while I give salutations to Professor Venkatraman, which is this other photograph in the picture on the side. And that is me as taking on as a Vice Chancellor, and my teacher, Dr. Gaun, who was my chemistry teacher in a small Kendriya Vidyalaya, which had just 12 of us doing science. And when I taught chemistry, and incidentally, my favorite subject was organic chemistry, he distributed laddus to the whole school. And I had the opportunity of meeting up with him and requested him to be the chief guest on the day I took over as Vice Chancellor, because Guru remains Guru Devo Bhava. And with that, if I could not reach, had I continued with my tirist with organic chemistry, I would have been lucky to be part of this alumnus association. But thank you so much, and my regards to the family of Professor Venkatraman, as well as Kishore Bhai Mariwala, for this endowment and bringing me back to the world of chemistry. With that, I would like to, since I was giving the liberty, I thought I would talk about my role and road in the armed forces what are the opportunities, the challenges, and that would stimulate whoever would like to sort of take it on. Because today gender has hardly remained a difficult path, and I think anyone can take it up. But while preparing for this talk, that's me now, reflecting on the roles and the multiple dimensions that I had to follow, multitasking, whether it was a soldier, a doctor, handling a family. And there were lots of times where I really wasn't sure what I'm taking up. Probably like I may have been like that fish who didn't know whether I'm going to land up in water or not. And therefore I quote Robert Frost, who says, freedom lies in being bold. And probably I just went with my gut feeling of being bold, whether joining the Armed Forces Medical College or joining the Armed Forces thereafter. So if I start with my reflections, did I see this destination? The answer is a big no. Did I know I will reach this high? Again, it's a big no. Was I prepared for the challenges? I really don't think I was. Was the journey tough? I will add maybe, because I mean, as the journey got tougher, the good old army says, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And probably that just helped me along. So what is it that kept me going? And I thought it was two things. One is preparing myself for each situation by reinventing and rediscovering myself with new skill sets, and waking up each morning looking forward with enthusiasm and ending the day with satisfaction that possibly some more problems have been solved with a positive attitude. So therefore, I gave this recent Women's Day, when they asked me to give an editorial, I called it Dheya Tharva Shikhar Ghata. Make your own destiny and you will have no regrets. And in that sense, there's so many senior faculty who will, I'm sure, agree with me that a journey of a student to a vice chancellor is something like this story of evolution. When I saw this cartoon, I thought this is exactly like that. Here the student is bent because he still has to get strength in his spine to stand strong. Having acquired information, knowledge, by the time, he becomes a senior faculty, that's probably, he's absolutely ramrod straight till he starts taking more and more responsibilities. But by the time you reach here, you see how bent that spine is, this time more out of wisdom, with the weight of knowledge, and continue to be a lifelong learner, because the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know, and you get back into studies. So I think this is exactly the journey of this student who passed out with that chemistry topping in CBSE in 78, through years, through the journey. And then again, I don't know what made me take on a new challenge as the Vice Chancellor. So this journey, I thought, if I really think about it, was where I had got an education and got a degree. And well, the reason why I chose armed forces, it was, I think, something which, when I was reading the life of Professor K. Venkataraman, I thought that he was such a stickler for discipline and was such a finicky person about fitness. And I thought that somewhere similar genes were there in my traits were there in my genes. And I thought, therefore, when I saw Armed Forces Medical College with no background, I jumped into it because that was something I could relate to. And education today, even in those days, was just, okay, I get a degree and I start going to patient care. Research was nowhere in the line. So my journey has been for how to align. And again, one of the teachings I saw of Professor Venkataraman, who said that you have, whatever research is, it has to have a translational value. And therefore, with the evolution, how can education find new methods of improving patient care, and how can this be a continuous cycle? And along this journey were huge testing times. I don't think I would bore you all with the innumerable ones, but some things which I really remember was, we were the first batch who were women sent to the field. And I remember being marched up to the general officer commanding, because he looked me up and down and said, what do I do with this lady if there's a war? And this was in the year 1983. And I said, sir, I don't know about what you will do, but I know what I'll do. I won't be left behind as a rear. I will be up front. And I think that was the ethos with which I continued to serve. And there were other problems like post-graduation with a small child. It was because in the armed forces, you don't just keep going from degree to the other. You keep having to spell times of service, where there was 4 years before I could do a post-graduation. And that too, I following a passion like pediatrics, where most of the times, my husband and me, who both served in the army, 25 years of our service, we were not posted together, because at that time the policy was they'll be posted together as far as possible, which probably in our case, with no background, with no knowledge, was interpreted as far as possible. And so we took it in our stride, being single parent, pursuing my passion, doing the profession, at times listening to a daughter who said, Mom, you're away even when I am sick, bahut bimar padna padega. So there were tough times. The other thing was hurdles to pursue passion for continuous professional development. As I tell my journey, it may sound it's very easy, but having to go back and sticking to this thing that I want to do pediatrics, because there were certain policies, rules, and as a lady getting back, it was not easy. Or nephrology, which was not even heard of, and where the organization wouldn't understand. For 6 years spending my leave, whatever I could, to go places like the All India Institute to train myself and showing that I meant business, that I wanted my sabbatical to train in pediatric nephrology. And today it's so happy to see that there are so many people, and the country is having it, more than 100 people trained in this, but nowhere near what it needs. Accepting a loss of seniority, because at that time the rules were not really pro women, and therefore having come out top of the batch with all the laurels, because I was a woman, I wasn't given a permanent commission, and therefore at 20 years of service, I was told, since you were short commission, even if you had the same training, we have to put you down, and I was put to the bottom of the batch. But at those times, instead of trying to fight the organization, I said, okay, there must be something good, and probably there were opportunities which let me do many more things other than keeping up only on one side of it. Pursuing research under challenges, because when you move from place to place and you try to have translational, it is not easy, or getting funds for them. And then when you're just at your peak of your career, you're piled with administrative roles and you feel like running away. But one hands on and learns new, an old horse which learns new trades. Choosing to serve in field condition. And yes, in those days, it was more of a man's world, and continues to be, because the percentage of women in the armed forces, even in the medical corps, is not more than about 23%, where nursing officers is 100%. So these are some of the ways, but today the skies have opened up. Women are being taken in every other service. They're even this is the first year, they're even NDA is getting ready to receive them. So I think they've been given permanent commission, they've been given opportunities to command. So I think nothing can stop us. But along those ways, there were lessons I learned, and those are the ones I thought I'll share with you, because I put them akin to the Japanese art of kintsukuroi, where a vase, if it's broken and you stick it with a golden glue, it just turns out looking more beautiful and tougher. And I think that is where my story is. And therefore, in all those trying circumstances, I quote Nadia Comaneci, who said, I don't run away from a challenge because I'm afraid. Instead, I run towards it, because the only way to escape fear is to trample it beneath your foot. And therefore, with great determination, having fought with my parents that I want to join the armed forces, to quit was not an option. So, and luckily, even every time I did want to give up, it was my husband or colleagues and people who really supported me, and close family, which helped me continue through this. So what were some of those moments and learning events in my life? I think the first was, as a young faculty, I just couldn't accept it that in those days, in the late 80s, early 90s, where tiny babies, we did not have neonatal intensive care units. So setting up something in a corridor keeps ensuring no infection, keeping them warm without really being specially trained or having the equipment that today NICUs have. It became news when the first baby turned out, which was 600 grams. And then within a year, 8 such babies went out. And that was how it was rewarded. But I think the biggest reward, when in this photograph, this little baby catches up with me in Delhi, and she's studying today for her IAS exams. So I think the biggest satisfaction can come from small things, was a lesson one learned very early. And that is how, among many other things that I did, one was always trying to fix a problem by finding solutions. And so therefore, when I found that there was a huge gap about bladder dysfunctions and these urinary tract infections in young children and how they were affecting their kidneys, we did not have the infrastructure. I had an opportunity to go abroad, train, but in India, when this wasn't available, we did initial studies and prepared algorithms, which are being now into the textbook, and created these things on voiding disorders using simple observational, good history and simple investigations instead of doing the more invasive urodynamics. Then when I went on to start dialysis programs for children, it was not again easy. So therefore it was a very expensive proposition. And even in the armed forces, though everything is taken care of, they wouldn't have unlimited funds. So using simple techniques like teaching even an uneducated mother how to autoclave using pressure cookers at home, or how to make that same bag last for much longer periods, or how to get the correct fluid, and publishing those things were absolutely easy. And that's where I learned that there's great pleasure in finding solutions which are affast. That was my motto, and affast was something which is affordable, feasible, acceptable, and sustainable. And that continues even till date. But having done that on my own, I realized very early that I can't get bigger. And therefore, soon joined hands with other colleagues, stood people along. And I'm extremely happy that these postgraduate students are all DMs, all super specialists, and they learned how to work in teams. And therefore, we could get for our first international publications by taking the Indian Society of Pediatric Nephrology into developing registries, joining up with the international registries. And that is how one learned that teamwork is the most important. So having done that, one landed up over the years, suddenly having moved in between, though it sounds like a quick, it was not continuous. I was sometimes in Pune, sometimes in Pathankot, then came back into this, and I was made the head of the department of pediatrics. And that time I realized that the teamwork needs even more. So using students, we devised our own little logo, and the team together, one realized that you have to take bold decisions and to be the change you want to see. So there were certain programs which we put in, which really changed the scene of training in for all other postgraduates in the armed forces, especially the women, because we had reasons where even a simple thing like pregnancy was considered a low medical category, and therefore a military course like post-graduation was akin to it, and they were removed from it. So all those things, bringing about those changes, getting residents to publish good papers, taking them to international and national conferences. This was something one could really motivate them, and that has now become the standard. Having done that, one realized that I'm enjoying teaching, and therefore it was not enough, that I wasn't adequately qualified to be a teacher. So therefore, I went back to a long distance with contact programs, the Fellowship for the Advancement of International Medical Education and Research. And I looked at doing projects which were e-mentoring, and that has again now come into being, and we are using it in a big way. So that was another huge skilling point for me to go back to my books after having been a professor. And that is where gave me an opportunity that it's important to develop a vision. As I grow up, I have to think bigger and bigger. And therefore, if you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you, is Steve Jobs' quote, but I realized that this was actually a case in this situation. So therefore, as a professor and head of the department in 2006, we sat together, brainstormed, and put it in writing. And extremely happy that people after me continued on this, because there was a path designed. So we had 2010, 2020, and the department has achieved all those and grown from strength to strength. So from where it was a corridor, then we opened into an old barrack and started something paint in a small portion of the ward, got some equipment, started a PICU, which is now today state of the art. So what is important is that make the most of what you have, and not to wait to have the most, was something one really learned again along the way. And therefore, this taking that collaboration and getting all these young people who were then motivated, they got together, and today they have published for Indian babies our own nomograms for neonatal jaundice. So mentoring was an important part beyond own work. So I thought this is another thing that one learned. And the same issue continued, that since I had to struggle so much to develop the specialty of pediatric nephrology, when one became became senior, we put down a path and how many people need to be trained in all other specialty, and how that for pediatric care, it is not enough to just know, and where the disease spectrum is changing, a vision map and a sub-specialty training vision was put in place. And this has landed up in today having an advanced center for pediatric medicine at the Armed Forces Medical College and the Army Hospital Research and Referral. And I love this picture because though they all look so dignified, they've all been my postgraduate students. And today each one is a DM in a separate super specialty. So therefore at this time I said, no, you've got this on a platter. Now you have to go into concept clinics of patient-centric and develop them, that a patient doesn't have to come repeatedly to the hospital, and make it that in one go, a child with multiple problems is seen. So the theme clinics concept was developed with having all the labs, and this was brainstorming with all of them, and therefore came in the birth of Vatsalya with the Army Chief's wife inaugurated. So therefore good ideas will materialize if you persist, is something one learned along. And in the same spirit, taking them along, set up a DBT's funded research lab at the RNR hospital, wherein we started looking at little from taking normally one talks of taking the bench to the bedside, but here the problems which were there on the bedside, we came back to the bench and started working on flow cytometries and various other techniques. And this is something which I thought I must share, that while the head was going full steam, another this thing that I wanted to teach and followed all along was that it has to be that head and heart have to go together. So this, so that these are all the students who would join in, where as a young faculty, this little girl on dialysis was her 6th birthday. And at 60, she sent me her 16th birthday pictures transplanted today. And now she's already a young lady pursuing her fine arts at a college. And another young girl who's pursuing biotechnology in the USA, again transplanted. So these are some of those stories where you know the teacher's effect can be till eternity, because now it is students who continue to give that. And from that, when I jumped into administration full time and was expected to take on, again using clinical acumen, I thought it is the same. Why look at files and this thing? Why not look them at just like patients? And just the way any difficult case I find a solution, I have to look at a file or look at a problem and find a solution, because I have to treat it. Using the same simile, one went in and brought in a lot of collaboration with the uniformed services. This was at the PACOM, giving them ideas with the DGA-FMS. And along this whole way, I think I felt that this multitask model, that name is woman, I don't know whether we are programmed differently with 2X chromosomes, but definitely all the Devis have multiple hands, and I realized I'm my biggest strength. But I also learned that at times I have been harsh on myself, and therefore I need to be kinder. And now I tell all young women, don't all the time be perfect. You can sometimes say, look, I can't manage this, it's okay. So, but I was lucky to have extremely strong support in my husband. And what was important, that while 25 years of our marriage, initial these things, we were always posted separately. And there were a number of times I pulled out my hair and said, I want to leave. It was my husband who said, let us grow together without growing apart. So it meant that I had to grow, he had to grow, and we had to support each other. And I think that is what ensured that today we are the first couple in the entire Commonwealth that both reached the 3-star general as lieutenant generals, and he retired as the quartermaster general of the Indian Army. And therefore, I feel we are very lucky in India that we have great family support. But while we pursue the science and take on these huge steps, I think our culture, our family values, our Sanskriti, we have to maintain them, and that is an added responsibility. So therefore, when I took over as dean, it was a wonderful day in my life, going back to my alma mater, heading it. But then I said the challenges now are different. I can't just sit there in the chair and do what is being done. I have to give back to this chair from the alma mater, which gave me so much. So I thought, how can I create an ecosystem where we can learn from mistakes and give the way I have learned, and how to make the students go back to just asking questions. Somehow our Indian system, we stop them and just making them rote learning, and how to make students resilient, good citizens, because that's another important aspect. And with the reason one thought of this was knowing very well that the knowledge doubling curve is so fast that today you cannot teach the same way in the same lectures, because information is available even on the internet. Even Google gives so much. So teachers have to facilitate learning and mentoring, and therefore started with getting correct people. We were having a slow administrative process of selections, medicals, which went on for a month. With NEET coming in, most students would join other colleges because we just weren't time. So changing that whole thing using the jigsaw technique and completing in 7 days what took 30 days, and using that time while attending to students, for parents, because they were equal stakeholders to understand armed forces services, getting them to interact with students, faculty, it changed the entire dynamics of the admission. And next thought was to get this curiosity, opened up a multidisciplinary research unit at the Armed Forces Medical College, with the help of DHR, and again put in timelines so that we knew, because I knew I didn't have it forever. And there I had those 2 years in which we put the same things. And therefore, by 2019, when I moved out, they continued to. There have been priorities do change. Some of the things have gone a little slower, but at least we do have, and students are enjoying learning much more. And our epigenetics lab is doing some amazing work. So therefore, while doing this, I wanted to bring my whole same concept of Sanskriti and the art of this. And I thought that how can I bring this using the Pareto principle of 80-20, whereas we insisted on undergraduates having 80% attendance. I said life is 80-20. You have to learn the science of medicine, but you also have to know the art of healing. And therefore, bring in language, religion, art, culture. And in that thing, I really compliment ICT for having lectures from different strata of life, people like me coming and talking to leading people like you in the science, that it is so important to open up your mind. And therefore, the left brain and the right brain, we have the corpus callosum, we have to activate it and make those connections to make it meaningful. And therefore, I continue till this date my own journey of having a fit mind in a fit body, whether it's yoga, jogging, or walking. And along the path, learned that giving holistic care to children was part of it. Now it translated into changing wards. It doesn't have to be that government hospitals, just because this thing have to look run down. We could change them and make them very cheerful, lovely places. And the same thing, if I had to teach them, I had to show it. So therefore, the students joined in, whether it was Pongal or Guru Purab or Ganesh Chaturthi, we celebrated with zeal and Holi, playing with the children, introducing marathon at AFMC, which has now become an annual event, and the TEDx talks to open up their minds. So using, again, our alumni came to the help and supported. And these are events which have now become sustainable and are continuing at the Armed Forces. Having gone through difficulties bringing up children, the first thing one did was try to open a creche for young women now pursuing post-graduation. And I was really lucky to be facilitated by the late Mrs. Bipin Rawat, and I pay my regards to her, having been able to work very closely with her on a lot of projects for welfare of troops and their children. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's just a mindset. You can be comfortable in any zone. We like to remain in our zone, but it's a mindset, and you can make a comfort. So I was equally comfortable when students one day jumped into the swimming pool, whether I'm going to punish them or go and this first enjoy with them. I thought, let me do that and then put them under discipline. And the same comfort when I had to visit my troops and motivate them on the Siachen base camp. So this was something which, again, a mindset, and I learned these traits along the way. And when it was after the dean's responsibilities, I had an option of going back to Delhi, but I requested the Director General that I need to go back and give more of this training to the field areas, and took up a responsibility for the first time where a woman went as the MG Medical, which is the complete operational medical cover for Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. And it was the time where 370 was abrogated, where Pulwama happened, where the army commander's helicopter crashed, but putting the best use of technology, remaining in touch through digital and taking on, we brought in huge amount of changes which are continuing and are being appreciated even today. So this was something that I felt that if I'm a soldier, I have to go down and get down to the grassroots. And I toured every forward area, motivating my young medical officers and the soldiers. And with that, landed up becoming a Lieutenant General, a Deputy Chief of the Integrated Defense Staff. But along with that, with the gray hair, came something that God grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change. I may want to change the world, but I cannot. The courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference was now well ingrained into me. And therefore, I like to now tell my students and everything that it's not enough to just get into this cycle of information, knowledge, and waiting to become great to get that wisdom. But it's of no use if information and knowledge is not put to the good of society. So though we all need to make a career out of it, we have to see what best we can do beyond. And therefore, in the milestones, these were some of the gems that I picked up. And with that, now, having had the past vision, I could develop a vision for the Armed Forces Medical Services. And because I was the first Deputy Chief Integrated Defense Staff Medical with the late General Bipin Rawat, and that gave me a huge opportunity to develop a lot of things, bring in technology, digital technology, etc. And that was of great use when along the same time that I got my Lieutenant General's rank and took on this appointment, the Honorable Prime Minister announced a war against Corona. Was I going to be just a doctor, or I was going to be the general? I chose to take on both. And using initiatives and innovations, within 3 weeks rolled out the Sehat, which was the services e-health assistance and teleconsultation portal, so that we could reach all our veterans from their home, and also making the first COVID-19 med inventory, and then jumping and taking on the challenge literally along with DRDO within 3 weeks from this ground, which was just raised to level by 5th July. We are taking a team along, putting all protocols in place. We showed that we can put up a hospital for 1,000 patients. So this was something interesting. And then I got an opportunity to work closely under the DST's science and technology, this thing for preparing our own mathematical model. I started working closely with Professor Vidyasagar Manindra Agarwal on the Sutra model, which is susceptible, undetected, tested, positive, removed approach. And in this, we could really analyze lockdowns and show how these help. And this thing's taking the recovered, we could find a reach parameter. So getting back into learning mathematics, working with 2 mathematicians while bringing in my clinical sense into it. It had nothing to do with pediatric nephrology, but it had the experience of being at the bedside. We could develop these algorithms which prove time and again tested that they go well. And now we are just ready with the latest paper, which should go into publication, which has shown why India's decision it was like a nuclear reaction in a controlled manner, letting people getting infected, but the vaccination and how this is impacted versus the other countries is the latest paper. So I think that is the important. I started off by saying medical education, research, and public health have to be aligned. They are in 3 silos today. There is one department in the government which looks after medical education. There's another one which is about research. There's a third which looks after health. They don't talk to each other. So having been on the PM's nominated to the STIAC, I put across this vision of mine to the Honorable Prime Minister that we need to work to bring innovation, use technology, and take this together. About 4 years back, little knowing that I'd get the opportunity to try and make a difference in all respects. And therefore, when I got nominated to the Board of Governors of the Medical Council of India, along with Dr. Vinod Paul, we brought in 56 regulations changes, and we are now seeing through the NMC, lot of National Medical Council, where education systems are changing. We're changing to competency-based, and we are moving on to different assessment modules. And therefore, when I was retiring and I said, now what? I'm going to go and enjoy. I have this huge bucket list, but something nagged me. I said, I'll go out with so much experience that even the governor asked me, why are you taking this headache after good? And I thought, if I don't do it now, who will? And I must take it on. And therefore, I took on 1st of November, and 15 November came out with a vision document, which I've uploaded on our website, where what we hope to achieve in timelines with deliverables and how we will work together as a team. And I'm goading my entire team, and I have excellent support from them all at the university, and we hope to bring about a change. Not leaving that just because I'm sitting there, I'm trying to push. Yet for the first time, we've got out as a integrated research of taking Ayurveda, homeopathy, Unani, allopathy, all the colleges together. We are looking at certain different outcomes that have happened in Malegaon, where people are refusing masks, refusing vaccines, and yet are having a high seropositivity. So this is an ongoing project, and I really look forward if we can do something together, even with ICT. So in the end, I think competence is paramount. And competence is in various skills. You have to keep acquiring them. But we also need to not to forget to have fun along the way, whether it's playing Holi or doing everything. And in the end, I'd like to say that find an opportunity in each challenge. To all you chemical engineers, I think we have to be our own catalysts for the reaction to go. But what is most important, like the book, we need to find our own ikigai, where mission, passion, profession, vocation are all in harmony to what the world needs, and we can make a difference. And therefore, I have enjoyed, and in all humility, have had the joy of serving in the three most noble professions at one time. And as a doctor, could be the first pediatric nephrologist, and headed the operation Kojit over COVID. As a teacher, could go back as dean to my alma mater, and I've now become the vice chancellor of a huge university with insurmountable challenges awaiting. And as a soldier, taking on Northern Command and becoming the first DSIDS Med. I think it's been a great honor, and I look forward to these new challenges. So in the end, I acknowledge the contribution of my parents, family, colleagues, patients, and most important, my students, who taught me how to take on these challenges. And I think I'm my biggest challenge, but I cannot do this alone. And I needs to be replaced by a we, which is applicable to all. Because finally, the path from illness to wellness is when I goes away and we comes in. Thank you so much. Jai Hind, and I end my talk here, and hope that while I have been able to show opportunities have to be made by each one, everyone can take opportunities. But today we are looking at collaboration. The NEP has brought out huge, and when I was looking at the work done by K. Venkataraman on whether it was the flavonoids, and we know that so many of our plants, we are looking at ways and means. I'm sure ICT is doing a lot of work, and we'd be very happy if we can collaborate and work on finding newer ways of our own Ayurveda, our own nutraceuticals, and what opportunities we have in with using new scientific methodologies. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Outstanding. Thank you, madam. I mean, there are many of us in ICT whose thought process and views resonate with whatever you have said. And you have indeed given a correct flavor in terms of what is important in life and what is necessary for us to keep going, and how whatever we have learned, we can put to use for the betterment of the society. Outstanding job. I think this is my only comment, and thank you very much. So let others have, if at all they want to make any comments or observations.
We have some time, so we'll take a couple of questions if anybody else wants to. On my side, I can say it was a very captivating speech, Dr. Kanetkar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Any questions? Anybody who's watching on YouTube, as well as the people who have joined here on Zoom?
I'd like to make a comment. I'll put my sure. Oh,
Sandra Shroff.
yeah. I'm Sandra Shroff. I'm on the Board of Governors, and I thoroughly enjoyed your speech, and the story of your life. It's amazing. It's inspirational, and carry on doing it. Just carry on.
Thank you so much. I think it's all people like you who've been such, well-wishers to me that it stimulates me to carry on. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I make a comment, please?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It's so inspiring coming from a woman, but even a man starting his career can learn a lot from what you have said. And this is universal. It is not meant only for men, but it's universal. And a lot of young men should follow your ideas and follow the path that you have taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the modesty with which you delivered, madam, was incredible. And for the achievement that you had, it is truly inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Vijay, please go ahead.
Yeah, Vijay
Yep.
has it.
Dr. Habu.
Yeah, Vijay, you are mute.
Dr. Vijay Abu, you are muted.
Vijay,
Mute yourself.
you are mute.
Struggling with that. Okay. I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yes.
While I'll start making my comments, while I also struggle parallelly to bring my video on. Madam, it was a wonderful lecture. I mean, that's been said many times. But I think you possess one weapon which no one else probably possesses, just smile. I think your patients must be getting better because looking at you. So, my question to you on an academic front is: did you find any place for Ayurveda in the treatment of soldiers and in a particular category, particularly children?
That's a very good question. Thank you. But because we work in watertight compartments, even when in those early days when they tried establishing Ayush clinics into this, so I did not have a personal, choice of using that. However, available formulations, I found excellent use in my personal thing of 3-4 things which were readily available. For example, Chyawanprash with the vitamin C levels, they were not done as studies because it would not be permitted in uniform. But I definitely saw reducing respiratory infections. And I wanted to do the same with the lay berry because DRDO was extracting from that also as immune modulators. But at that time, I could not conduct a direct research on that. So these were some of those situations where even another, which is today, I don't know if it's available, there's something called Septilin. Again, for children getting with repeated viral infections, I found that it used to really help reduce the number of infections which happened in the day. So I have no scientific basis, and therefore I felt that now there is an opportunity and I must develop a facility to look at which are time tested. And therefore, for the first time, when I had to nominate a pro vice chancellor, I've taken someone who was a dean of a Ayurveda college. And I've told him that please come in and let's work into. And at the same time, I'm designing courses which bring in the best, because patient as a whole needs an integrated approach and not a pathic approach, so if there's any pathy required, it's only sympathy and empathy, but we use all the other pathies. So therefore, how can we bring in and how can we do evidence-based? Because finally science wants evidence-based, but unfortunately, because of our systems, we have not. So can we bring in that and resuscitate good family medicine is one of the challenges I've given myself.
If I can add with the permission of Sir Pandit, I'm Smita Lele.
Yes,
and I'm
Smita, please go
happy
ahead.
to tell you, madam, that now Ayush has become little more flexible, and Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan is there as a chair for the interdisciplinary. And even I was involved in taking out a holistic thing. So they have now added modern food and nutrition as a part of Ayush. So the day is not far when they will also add modern medicine. Thank you, madam. A wonderful talk.
Thank you, madam. And I am there with Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan and Vinod Paul on that integrated health committee, which has been formed, and I'm looking at devising curricula.
Yes.
Well, it was a really wonderful lecture,
Thank you, sir.
Lieutenant General Karnitkar. And I wanted to ask you a question related to what you mentioned about the corona fight within the armed forces. Now, it was very, very important at that particular juncture where our eastern border was kind of a tense, that all our officers and our armed forces should be completely filled. And the corona was rampant across India. So how did you tackle that particular challenge? Because we did not heard much about anything about corona in the armed forces at all.
So I think that's a very lovely question. Three-pronged attack was done. One was force conservation. So we an absolute no, and we sealed off the northern and the eastern. I mean, now I can talk about it. So troops who were sort of, as the corona started, we started flying in those who needed to, and they've underwent strict 3 weeks of quarantine, so that we were very sure that we're not going to send, because we didn't know how severe. So we could not let the soldiers there be infected. So that was one where we did a force preservation. Secondly, we stopped leave so that movement reduced. Thirdly, where we really, this thing was, besides the isolation and this thing, for using for the other areas in the peace, for like these extra hospitals, we said we will not touch those troops. We will only use from the peace stations. So north and east was not touched at all. So we had to make do, where our doctors, nurses, some of them went without break for days together because there was no way we could. But they, that was sort of, they all pitched in at that time and worked very hard. And the third thing which came in extremely useful was that we brought out, India developed a vaccine, and that is a true this thing of a unity where all of government, scientific community, everyone worked together. And the moment Covishield came, along with healthcare workers, they brought it for frontline workers. So the first time that we had the first wave, we didn't have much of a problem because of all the lockdowns and the effects that we saw. Very few soldiers actually, and soldiers are the fittest. So in the survival of the fittest, we saw very little of that infection. Once the vaccine came, there was hesitancy, because just the way the country was hesitant, even the soldiers were a little hesitant. So there were times when, like, I remember even in headquarters, where the CDS, all of us went and took the vaccine just the way Modi went. And secondly, we said no leave till you take the vaccine. And anyone who has a doubt, the doctors had to explain the pros and cons. And we did 100%. I mean, by the time we were hit by the second wave, we had done a 98% vaccination completion. So with the result, and this data was shown that how in the second wave, in fact, because of paucity of time, but in my talks on COVID, I've used those slides to show how we had absolutely almost no mortality. And the 6 patients who did die were because they were either immune compromised, transplanted, with pancreatitis, with severe diabetes. I mean, I can count on my finger. So that showed how the vaccine was so effective in preventing serious disease and this. And that is how we could really translate it into a very good practice. So that I think this was, so it was showing that normally, you know, we treat convincing even and they were very happy. I gave a different perspective. I said, normally you talk of war on 2 fronts. This is a war on 3 fronts. You know, you have the eastern and the northern, but I said this is third. And I said, we've only talk of CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and it's so hypothetical. But I said, this is akin to a biological war. It'll come and swoop in, it'll affect anyone. How is it different? So the only different I said is, we are today the soldiers and you are our shoulders. At other times, you are the soldiers. We medical people are the shoulders who support you. So they support, and the chiefs all came together. And the CDS took a real prime, said, whenever there were doubts, they said, country mein kuch bhi hoga, we have to do it. So he really empowered me at all times. You take decisions.
Fantastic.
Oh, great. So we never heard about anything, and only 6 mortalities is absolutely great.
Incredible. It's incredible.
Yes, yes. The another question.
I'll add to that, and the protocols were so good. We have not recorded a single black fungus in any of our service hospitals. The patients we treated were veterans, families who got treated in other hospitals, where a lot of hospitals, the doctors and nurses themselves wouldn't even touch the patients. Here they were there because we were there. The armed forces teaches you lead from the front. You know, I will share with you the CDS late General Bipin Rawat one day wore PPE and he said, I have to see how the patients undergo and how those doctors are working. Kaise lagta hai? He wore the entire PPE and went into the COVID ward.
Oh, great, great. Okay, I had another question which was related to your earlier career, where you showed pictures where the facilities were as good as not there for the really for the small children and their kidney diseases. Now, what that must have been a great challenge, and how you came out of that, and how you convinced everybody that this is something which is required. And you must be at that particular time a young officer, and to convince people.
Yes, it was really tough. The reason I wanted to do nephrology, I mean, you picked up the correct cue as to why I chose nephrology. I was I just finished, you know, MD pediatrics, and my mother was diagnosed with kidney failure.
Oh.
And I realized that I'm a doctor, I have to be able to know, and I know so little. And then when I went back, children, there were hardly any. There were literally handful of people. When I started reading up, there was Professor Dr. Srivastava in All India Institute, Kumud Mehta in Wadia Children's Hospital, Namalwar in Chennai, and a few Umali, few people, this, that, and no one. So I started going to Wadia Children's to try and learn pediatric nephrology. And then walked up in a conference to Dr. Srivastava, said, Mujhe ye seekhna hai. And he just looked up and he said, Fauj mein, what do you want to? You know, okay, you can leave your biodata. But then he realized I all my leave I would take, I'd go and spend a month, so I want to learn. So this is where I try to tell people that all of us wait that we will get. But if I had to learn, okay, I may not get the sabbatical, I may not get a degree, but nothing stops me from reading, learning, spending some of my own leave and working with patients, working with dialysis. So this continued for 5 years. Till they, and I kept applying and pleading that this is, I've now achieved this. I've done this short fellowship using my half pay leave, using my leave. So finally they felt sorry for me and said, she's crazy. In fact, the exact words were, I thought one of my the senior teachers who was now a general officer, he said, माधुरी मुझे लगा तुम बहुत दिमाग वाली हो, इतने गोल्ड मेडल लाई, लेकिन तुम्हारा दिमाग इतना छोटा, पहले तुम बच्चों का इलाज करने गई, फिर तुम बच्चों की किडनी में चली गई, और वो किडनी भी और छोटी होती है, तुम उसका इलाज करना चाहती हो, क्या मतलब किस अकल से कर रही हो? मैंने कहा सर, आई हैव डिसाइडेड, अब मैंने यही करना है. So whether it was that and with training, then getting those fellowships, all of them did on my own leave, because they wouldn't spare me every time. So I would take half pay, without pay, keep going abroad, coming back. Even for starting dialysis in children for those CAPD, where using the government nomograms, that publication I showed was only because they said L1, and that L1 was causing too much of problems in children. So I did a study, published it, went with a bag to the headquarters and said, this is the problem and I have to get it, and got those things changed. So it was not easy, but I think, once you've, if I have to jump into it, and if I could stand in front of a train to say that if I don't get a seat because I have to reach by tomorrow morning, if I don't get a seat, I won't let this train move. And I got away with it. I think it gave me guts to do more and more of these things.
Great. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I think it was a great session. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General Dr. Madhuri Kanitkar, ma'am. As a sign of our love, we would like to give you a token of appreciation. And for that, I would like to invite Dr. Sanjay Mendale and Professor Pandit to virtually hand it over to Dr. Madhuri Kanitkar, ma'am. Just give me 1 second.
So thanks a lot, ma'am. And this is
Thank you, madam.
in our appreciation, we giving you this. I virtually, actually, we can't do it in presence.
We will organize it to send it to you, though.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and as I mentioned in the earlier, in my opening address, there is honorarium for this lecture, and we will be soon contacting you and sending you across.
And I will tell you what to do with it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Because it will go to some needy people.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, that's
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mendale and Professor Pandit. We have now reached the end of today's program, and it's a custom that current departmental head proposes a vote of thanks. Since Professor K. Venkatraman was head of Department of Dyes, I would now like to invite Professor N. Sekar, head, formerly called Department of Dyes and now called Department of Specialty Chemicals Technology at ICT, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nilesh. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks. I really like the very inspiring talk by Dr. Madhuri. I couldn't agree more than what Professor Pandit told about our talk, that every one of us is inspired by you, all the faculty members. So I would like to officially thank the guest speaker, Dr. Madhuri Kanitkar, Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, Nashik, and Professor Pandit, Vice Chancellor of our institute, for taking time out of their busy schedule and being part of the UAA Professor K. Venkatraman Memorial Oration. A special thank to Mr. Kishore Mariwala for initiating this series of Mariwala lectures in the name of the former directors of University ICT. A special thanks to Mr. Dilip Udas for reading the biodata of Professor K. Venkatraman. A special thanks also to Professor M. Sharma, Professor J.V. Joshi, and Professor G.D. Yadav, the former directors, vice chancellors of the institute, and all the other ICT faculty members, advisory board members, UDCT Alumni Association, BOG members, students, and everybody who attended today's function. With this, I announce the official closure of today's program, and I request everybody to stay back for a group photo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Singh.
I think if everybody can switch on their cameras, we would like to capture the screen. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Nilesh.
you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
And then we can stop the YouTube live also. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good night.
Thank you.